there's so much entitlement that's crept into the worship world. So much entitlement because we think his presence has something to do with us, or we think the crowds in the stadiums have come to hear us.
Hey.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good.
It's good to see you.
Thanks for asking me to do this.
Why?
Well, because it's fun to talk. I kind of forget these things are here because it's wonderful to talk to friends that love Jesus. It's just good. It's wonderful.
So, we go way back.
Yes.
And, but this is the first time we've been able to sit down and chat outside of traveling on the road.
Exactly.
And I'm going to take my gum out of my mouth. I forgot I even had that. So, Steph, how are you?
Oh my word. I'm good. I'm blessed. The Lord's just tucked us in the sweetest space. I think we needed it so much. We went from Reading, which is wonderful, to tiny Franklin.
So why are you following me around America? So what is that all about?
Did you come to Franklin first, though?
I mean, technically no. And technically you were in Reading first as well, but it just feels weird.
I'm kidding. Yeah. No, I think it's pretty amazing though. I feel like, I don't know, even being in the same place, it always reminds me of what, God did when we met. But we felt like the Lord led us out here. There's so many little signs and stories that come with the move. Yeah. You know how that is. And then the Lord, we were looking at houses in Reading. This is just a fun little one. And I was frustrated with Steven because he was on his computer on a Sunday. And I was like, we don't do this.
Hold on, what? You don't do computers on Sundays?
I was like, we have to have a day when we are out.
Okay.
And this is the Lord's day, and I need you to check in here. Okay. I was not stoked, and I was probably rude. But he was like, babe, I know, but I felt like I needed to get on. I felt like I needed to get on and look for a house. And he's like, and I found something. I'm like, okay, I'm sorry. But he showed me this little white kind of farmhouse. Yeah. And he's like, this is probably going to be my structural nightmare. But he's like, I feel like there's something on it. I was like, well, let's find out where it is. And we find out that it's on the property line of Grace Center.
Yeah. Yeah.
Tiny little farmhouse.
I've seen it.
And wild. So when I came here for 7707 to Nashville to the call, before I ever went to Reading, before I ever met Steven, none of that. Mm-hmm. I came here with I don't know if you know Mason Heron, but this whole crew of people from Worcester. Okay, from the Worcester where you have been, and we ended up at Grace Center that Sunday morning after. I have no idea. I don't know anybody there, but somebody had a friend of a friend, and I'm like, don't care. Just want to be in church. And I have one of the most marking encounters that I have nobody laid hands on me. I went down. Nobody touched me. I'm still waiting to find out what it was all about, to be honest.
Yeah.
But I got up, and as we were leaving, I said to the Lord, one day when you call me back to this place, I want to live on the land nearby because this is an open heaven. This is holy ground. And I want to be right here. And I want to come to this church. They didn't even have a sign on the door, And then the Lord gives us the house on the property line.
So cool.
You can't make that kind of stuff up,
I love Grace Center.
I know. Grace Center loves you.
Pastor Jeff's incredible, too. He's a stunning
soul.
Amazing man. Listen, so I'm sure that everybody watching this has some understanding of who you are. But for those who might not, who is Steffany? What do you do? Tell us about yourself.
Oh, man. Nobody ever asks that.
I think I assume, right, that most everybody watching this will know who you are. But let's just say you go to a place and nobody has any idea. Yeah. Who are you? What do you do?
Well, I'm a little Nazarene pastor's daughter who got completely ruined by the Spirit of God in the most wonderful way. And my daddy always loved the Holy Ghost. He taught us things at home that we didn't even learn in church, right?
Yeah.
Because they didn't talk about all of that. But he taught us about healing. And when the car would break down, he'd say, we're going to lay our hands on this engine and we're going to pray and Jesus is going to start this car. And we saw AIDS healed and the dead raised in these little Nazarene churches, and just the power of prayer, the power of leaning into the person of Jesus and the gospel. And we saw deliverance ministry. And so I have a rich heritage that I know so many didn't have. And I'm so grateful. It becomes more precious to me as time goes on, what I was given. So when I fell in love with Jesus, it was I watched my parents love the real Jesus, and they made it easier for me. They made it much easier for me to go, oh, you're worth giving everything to, you know. So I would have these, I'm just going to give you little snippets because I don't, you know, when we were in this Nazarene church in Ohio, the one before the one you came to, I had this ongoing dream as like a kid, like 7 to 11, of this hill lined with flags from other nations up to a building, and I could never see the name on the side of the building.
Right.
Prayer house, everything. I never knew what it was. And I thought maybe someday I'll go there. And I would tell my parents. I loved hanging out with my parents' friends. They were my favorite. I loved kids my age, but I was like, get me out of youth group and get me back to the grown-up class where the glory's falling. And so I'd tell them about it and we talk about it. And sure enough, I mean, I think in these dreams, I would often be on the platform or in the room somewhere, you know, and my mouth would be open. But I never thought of singing. Like I just never thought of doing worship. I knew I would maybe it would be a part of things. My family, so musical, and there were such worshipers. We worshiped all the time at home and with friends. But I didn't have like this sense that I was gonna be known for anything like that. So I just was like, Lord, whatever that means. I thought maybe it had to do with speaking, but then fast forward, the Lord lands me in Reading to visit with some friends, and I start climbing this hill, and I'm telling you, like, the presence of the Lord just fell all over me because I thought, you have been talking to me about whatever is going to happen here since I was a little girl. And so it was like, this huge, I didn't know what was going to happen. And now, not knowing what's going to happen to me, I'm about to cross this. I'm coming here. This is all I know. I don't know what you're going to do with me, but I'm coming here.
So for those of you guys who don't know, there's in Bethel Church, there's a hill that goes up, and on both sides it's covered in flags. Big building up on top of the hill, and so you ended up in Bethel. But let's rewind this a little bit further. And it's something that I've talked about over the years, here and there, because. Yeah. I met you, gosh, I think I might have been married like a couple of months, 2 months, 3 months.
Yeah, like barely.
I was just married.
Babies.
Yeah, we were all babies. How old were you at the time?
Oh man, I'm terrible. I'm like 39 now.
Okay, 30. I'm 41 in like a couple of weeks. So I think I was like 21.
Am I 39, I think.
It's happening. We're getting old, girl.
I don't know.
And maybe I'll with your permission, I'll throw up some of the pictures so they can see.
Please do. Bring them back.
I ended up. So a buddy of mine, Jamie Galloway, went out to this little Nazarene church, your father's church. Yeah. That his youth pastor. He wasn't
the head pastor, but he was like associate.
Okay, associate pastor. Yeah. All I remember is just being like, dude, this guy's a baller. Like he loves the Lord.
Yes.
And vision for days. So my buddy goes out, does some youth meetings, and the kids come back from these youth meetings. And correct me if I get any of this wrong, okay? But the story was, Jamie goes out, does youth meetings. Were you there at those meetings?
With Jerry Nicewander.
Yeah, with Jerry.
With the young adults. It was the young adults, and 242.
And I'd like to say this, like, when people ask me, have you ever seen a revival? There's 3 that I talk about that I would classify as a revival. And one of those was Worcester, Ohio, at your church. It blew my mind. And so Jamie goes out, does this youth meeting. These kids get touched powerfully. Yes. And there's no real understanding. No. They come back. I think it was a Saturday night they come back, I think. And
he ended up staying.
Yep. Saturday night. And kids come back and they go home and they're like telling their parents they're changed. Yes. And then your father, the head pastor of the church, I forget who, or Jerry, they worked it out so Jamie would speak Sunday morning.
Yes.
And he wasn't supposed to. During the Sunday morning, it breaks out.
Explodes.
And you go into how long nonstop
I want to say it was at least 3 weeks.
Okay.
At least, if not 4.
I feel like it was much longer than that.
Probably.
Yeah. Because I was there for a week, and Jamie was there for almost a month before I came.
True.
And then Randy came after.
Terrible at math.
I feel like it was 2.5 months.
I'm sure you're right. I think because I was such a mess the whole time, I don't even know if I would know where it started and ended. But yeah.
So daily meetings.
Yes.
With incredible testimonies.
I mean, till like wee hours of the morning, and people would go home, a couple hours of sleep, go to work, and come back.
Yeah. You would hear stories of drug addicts driving by.
Yes, because there was a flame. There was literally an orange flame at the top of the steeple.
Yep.
And people were pulling off of the road. Like, what's going on? Like, there's people in there. Is it on fire?
Yeah.
Like, they didn't know, and they're pulling it. Remember, we were like way past capacity.
Oh, yeah.
So remember that the foyer and the hallways that went around, every door was open so that the kids were on the stairs. Yeah. We were crammed in there.
It was amazing.
So beautiful.
And it went, and it just went and went. And I have a couple of really precious memories. One was meeting you for the first time and seeing you. And I will never forget the first day hearing worship and hearing you worship. It was evident that God was going to do something incredible with your life. I mean, you have favor, but I remember just being like, I've never heard a voice like this. And I travel and hear a lot of voices. Of
course.
But it was so raw, so real, so beautiful. Yeah. And so that was one of my highlights. But also, I had these snippets of memories of going into Jerry's office and opening up a file cabinet. It was just full of glasses. Like, people would just leave their glasses on the chairs. No one was even really praying for that, but they would just come. Their vision would get corrected. And I remember him opening them, and there was like a drawer of 100 pairs of glasses in there. Yes. And this was in a place that your father loved the presence of the Holy Spirit, but still some people weren't really comfortable.
Yeah, I mean, like, our head pastor took the whole staff to Brownsville years prior. So they were hungry, but yes, nobody had ever been here.
Right.
And so there was still like I don't know,
Yeah.
So it was just like everyone was learning at the same time.
Yeah. So that's when I met you for the first time. And I came out because Jamie had to go. So I filled in, I think, a week for him of these meetings. And it was every night, the presence of God. People would come from all over. People would get saved, healed, delivered.
So much deliverance.
And
because we had tons of, do you remember this? There were tons of witches that would come and then just leave.
Yeah.
Or, I hope some got saved, but it was, I will never forget some of that stuff. It was just like, they'd come in on purpose because that area was known for being the capital of Satanism before.
Yeah, wasn't it like worship? Anton LaVey's?
Yeah, he said if I could retire, he said if I could retire anywhere in the world, I would retire in Worcester, Ohio. It's set up on a pentagram.
Really?
Yeah, it's wild.
And it's the home of Rubbermaid.
When we
conspiracy. Whoa. No, I'm just kidding.
when we just for context, not because we want to spend much time on this at all, but the holiness of what happened. It's one of the reasons why I know the Lord came with such might and power, because there'd been so much bondage. And the remnant, like the wellspring of worship that is, you know what I mean? Woo! So when we pulled into town, there were like, excuse me for being,
go for it.
I mean, you guys go all over the world. So, but someone, like, they were looking for bodies that had been spread out in pieces all over the place of, like, it like, and there's flowers, there's weeping all over the place. Like, so we pull into town after this, like my family, to move there. I'm like, okay, we're in for some things. Of course, we call the Deliverance Worship family.
Is that what you're called?
Well, I mean, I'm like, of course, the Lord would call us here. It didn't occur. Like, I got there and I realized, oh my goodness, this family is like, my dad is, in Deliverance, and then they both were in worship. They're both musicians, and I grew up singing with them, and they went to lead in different churches. And so, I mean, the two together felt really special in that place. But all that to say, so much deliverance took place during that time.
Yeah, I remember.
People that are still free.
Yeah. Still free. It's crazy. I always find it fascinating because, we travel the world. Yeah. Now we meet a lot of people. You meet a lot of different denominations. Yeah. And I always find it fascinating how much deliverance scares people, how much the church has a hard time with it. But
all through here.
It's literally, it is the gospel. Like, it is a part of the gospel. Set the captives free.
Yes.
Go and make disciples of all nations. Heal the sick, raise the dead, cleanse the leper, cast out demons.
Yes.
Freely you've received, now freely give. It's such a part of it. we need to be seeing more of it. Yeah. And but it's also so offensive for so many. It's really scary too for a lot of people.
Right.
But we have to be doing it. So that marked it. So there was deliverance, there was healings that took place, salvations.
So much salvation.
Some of my favorite stories were just people coming in, not knowing what was going on, getting saved, set free.
Yes.
Yeah. So you got touched there.
I did. Can I tell that story?
Go for it. You do whatever you want.
I got touched in it probably marked the most significant to this day season of encounter. I had only prayed and believed for those things. I don't even think I knew I could ask to be touched by the Lord the way that he touched me in that time. And I remember, without even feeling like it would be right to go into all of them, I remember like going out into the presence, being like taken up out of my body in the spirit, and you're like, it's like everything goes quiet and you're in another place. And I'd only read about that in the Word. I had no idea that he would do that for me, take me up and speak to me that way. And I was just so glad to be near him. Yeah. It's like, all of this stuff was amazing, but like you are with the person who is doing all of this, And I remember waking up underneath we didn't have pews, but we had chairs, right? Waking up under the chairs, like coming to back in my body, and my dad having to carry me to his office, and I was weeping for hours at a time because you can hardly talk about what's happening. So, the Lord, my dad, he's like, I've prayed for this since I was a child. Wow. Like, I've prayed for these days since I was a child. And so I was marked forever. There was a no turning back. Not that I had thought about walking away from the Lord, or I had ever considered that, because I believed from the time I was a little girl that he was real, because I saw that he was real. But to know him for myself in that depth of intimacy, there was, to me, that revival marked intimacy for me more than anything. I was like, you mean that Matthew 6, Jesus is real. I can go in my door and shut it and talk to you, and you'll talk to me, and you'll touch me. Meet with me. Yeah. And it was a very face-to-face, beautiful season, and so I'm very thankful for it. And so one night, I was engaged to we're so good with sharing this story because we were dear friends now, but I was engaged to the pastor's son, who was the worship leader at the time, for lack of a better phrase. Not that we can really lead worship. You do or you don't. Okay, we need to talk about that later. We'll talk about that. But he was like over worship. You remember Nate? So special. And was the head pastor's son. And there's me, and we had this like beautiful, like in that time, we would stay hours and hours after service, like for even after revival. We moved into the new building, right? There was still like the afterglow of those things. And we would stay for hours afterwards and minister and sing, sing in the spirit. And we would sing out the same things at the same time that we'd never heard before. There was a holiness of that. Yeah. It's one way you can get really confused about who you're supposed to marry if you're getting in the Holy Spirit together and you don't. And everybody thinks, this is a match made in heaven, but maybe it's not, right? You're just in heaven together and you're like, oh. How long you been together at this point? We, we were engaged when you guys came. So, if maybe several months, a year, maybe at the most. But at this point, we're engaged. I'm singing on the mic. We're in worship, and there's ministry. There's people everywhere, bodies everywhere. And you had come up on the platform. Nate is over there singing, and I'm with one of the other girl singers over here to the side. And Will came up to me. Now you didn't even get do you remember this? I have the most you were probably brief, so gone memory of this. Well, you didn't lay hands on me. Okay. You didn't touch me. And I flew backwards like 10 feet. Okay. You know where those microphones, Yeah. You know where those microphones were? And then the drum kit was like behind it, but there was only maybe it's not 10 feet, but it's like they were only from here to here. And I end up on the stairs right in front of the drum kit. I flew backwards. was like a wind or something, the wind of the Lord, but you didn't even touch me. And you just went on like nothing had happened. You're just like over me the next minute. And you said, she said, you said, you and your husband have bread for the nations. And you're saying this over and over. And you're like, are you married? And I said, no, not yet. And you're like, are you engaged? And I'm like, yes. And you go, to who? I don't know what you were seeing, but it was like you were like what you were seeing and what I was saying was not computing.
So can I pause this and interject something?
Please.
So I don't remember how long like the meetings in Ohio went, and then we ended up, I think, in Reading. I think that was the last. That was like the next. So we're talking years later, and you shared this story with me, and I remember leaving, being like, I think she's really pissed at me. Like, I feel like I left and I was like, oh my God, I don't know, should I repent?
Freaking out for sure.
Yeah. Like, I don't remember, like, I remember the first time you told me this, leaving being like, I think she said I screwed up her life. Or like the word I gave, like, yeah.
Yeah.
So I went for like 2 years of like, oh my God, I think she hates me so much.
Bless your heart. No, I don't know what I said at the time.
We were like probably running in somewhere, and I was like, I hate it. Wow. So I avoided you for like 2 years.
If I picked bad words, I'm sorry. But what I was trying to say was that just, changed the trajectory of my life. The trajectory of my life. But so you're saying, are you engaged? And you're like, to who? Like kind of confused. And I'm like, what is this guy seeing? I'm laid out. And I point over to Nate, and you go, this is the best. You just go, huh. Like this, like, huh, well, you and your husband have bread for the nations. And I was freaking out because I'm like, oh, no. Because I had already at that point been going, oh, Lord, I don't know if this is I knew he was calling me out, and I didn't know if Nate would ever go. Mm-hmm. I thought, maybe he felt like he was supposed to stay. And I was like, already feeling, right now. I know, it's so good. Sweaty. Just. Okay. Let it happen. It's way less awkward now. We're good.
Okay.
But it was wild. It did change everything because it wasn't crazy long after that we did not end up together.
This is what freaks me out about the prophetic. And like when when I give people words, like probably back then I was just kind of running and gunning. I'm much more careful now.
I hear you.
I'm so much more careful now because I've had to repent and apologize for a lot of stuff.
I hear you.
And even now I'm like, oh my gosh, that's how people take words.
But I needed a gun.
I'm so happy that it worked out.
It was the Lord.
Well, but man, I think just if I could teaching moment for one second, like this is why the prophetic is not, we really need to wear kids' gloves and humility.
It's true. It's true.
Because man, like, it's so scary hearing something like that. I don't know why I feel so weird right now. Like I feel like.
But the thing is, that was my story, and right. I think even today the Lord would have done that.
Yeah.
Like I think because it is what I needed. I was like a petrified little girl who like I didn't trust myself to be making the right decision at that point. But I knew that the Lord had to say who I would marry.
Yeah.
And I knew that it was meant to be a set apart union. And I wanted that for him too.
Right.
But that it spared me so much agony of like feeling trapped. And it would have for him too. Like the Lord, we're such dear friends now. The Lord, I felt so rescued. Wow. Because it was a marking point because the Lord sent someone who wasn't in my everyday norm to shake me out of it.
Yeah.
And I needed that so much. It's the mercy of the Lord to me.
Yeah. So
I was all about the gun. It was like shots fired. I needed it. So that to me was a miraculous moment. And because I had so many moments with the Lord specifically about my husband, and I'm not like trying to be the little girl that's like planning my wedding at 15. I wasn't trying to do that. Right. But I had seen him in the spirit, and I knew that this wasn't it.
Yeah.
And so I was trying to reconcile that inside. But when the Lord sent you that day, it was like, okay, I see you, Lord.
Wow.
I hear you.
Wow.
So anyways,
so we reconnected.
Yeah.
I think you shared this with me, and
Reading?
Since then, it was probably in Reading, and I had been following what God had been doing
Sure.
in your life, because you went from being a student at BSSM,
right,
to being on the worship. Being on the worship team at church, and then
right.
next thing you know,
Sort of a freak thing.
all over the globe. Tell me about that. What's that transition from small church in Ohio? And actually it wasn't small. It was a revival. And then you guys were building a massive church. But church in Ohio to being at one of the biggest churches, the most influential churches in the world.
Right.
And then becoming one of the biggest. And you know what I'm saying? Becoming one of the most favor-filled worship voices in the globe.
Ooh,
and that's like,
I didn't think about that stuff.
But like, it's legit. It's like legit, right?
Yes.
And
I hear you.
You don't
so weird
act like you
No,
are.
I don't
You don't.
think
Yeah,
about
right. Which is why I love asking the question. What was that like?
I think when my parents would call me up as a little girl to sing with them, I would run out of the room because I was so petrified to be in front of people. And the Lord, like a little bit at a time, I think that season of renewal and revival, for me personally, and in Worcester, because it was such an intimate thing, for me, that was about intimacy. It was like, we are like my desire to walk face to face with Jesus. Like, I'm like, I can't ever be away from you again.
Yeah.
And I think because it was from that place, it didn't feel different. I was already uncomfortable in front of people. I'm still uncomfortable in front of people.
You are?
Yeah.
What?
I don't like it.
Really?
I love, like, I can get in the zone and enjoy people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But when you know how this is, I mean, maybe you're more bold than I am, period. But when
you'd be surprised.
So see what I mean? So when the Lord comes on you, though, when the Holy Spirit comes on you in power, you're doing stuff and saying things you had never dreamed of.
Oh, yeah.
I couldn't believe half the things that would come out of my mouth. I was just like, put me on like a glove and do what you want. Do what you want. Be it unto me according to your word. And so I think he did. He did. I blew it plenty of times along the way feeling like I had to nail it, I think. But the crowds, like the more people, it almost we were like white noise. I don't even, because when you find those eyes in secret, you will find them in a crowd.
Yeah.
And if that's where that's where your affection is, he's worthy of the bottle being broken in secret, and he's worthy of the bottle being broken in front of thousands and thousands of people.
And you have
that
led.
Was the same.
You have led in massive, massive gatherings.
Some big spots.
Yeah, I think we did. What was it? Were you in Brazil? Yeah, you were in Brazil. That was 3 stadiums one day.
Yeah. Yes.
I think 80,000 people in Morumbi Stadium. Sure. It was so weird. It was so, like, I love that moment of being in the side of the stage with you and Randy.
Oh man.
And seeing like this thing that happened all these years prior kind of come together in Brazil in front of 80,000 people. Yeah. It's such a trip to see how the Lord moves and puts all the pieces together. Right. Tell me about that. So I remember there was Randy. No, let me just rewind for a second. Randy wasn't even going to be in Brazil, but he came. I was like, you need to be here at the Send.
You can't miss this.
Yeah, you can't.
He's sewn in so much.
Yeah, he has. And on the side of the stage there, I shared with Randy a little bit of the story. And so I think he had heard it, but you hear a lot of stuff as you go. But Randy, you were there in Ohio. Steffany was the worship leader there. Randy sewed into Brazil. I know you guys had a moment on the side of the stage. Can you just tell me about that?
Yes. So Randy, who I love dearly, but we haven't seen each other enough for him to even remember. Like he meets so many people and goes all over the world. So like it was sweet how you like reminded him, hey, do you remember Ohio and this and that? And he was just so precious. And maybe you have, him so much better, but I have never been with him when I saw him that tender. Because, I would imagine his heart was falling out of his chest to see what God was doing in this nation that he so dearly loved. And he's been sowing into for so many years. So, but he looks at me with the sweetest, like, fatherly eyes. And we didn't even say much. He asked me if I wanted children. We're all crying. I don't even know why we were all crying. He asked me if I wanted more children. And I told him I was married and I had a little one. And I said, we would love more children. We haven't gotten pregnant again, and we kind of don't know if we will. We've been asking for that. But whatever the Lord wants. And he said, I feel that for you. He said, I feel that for you.
I don't remember this at all. I was there.
Yeah, I know. That's what's so funny to me.
I just have half a cat's brain on a good day.
You know what?
Steph.
There was a lot going on.
Yeah.
And he said, could I just pray for that? And I said, yes. And even physically, I mean, like, I had gone through a lot physically too. And which I know you saw me, and it was scary that one time.
Like that.
I couldn't, it was skin and bone really. But he prayed for me, and now we have the most amazing little boy.
That happened right after.
And I connect the two entirely because we could have gotten pregnant before. It's not like,
right. He's the boss. He's the OG.
So sweet. It was just sweet of the Lord, that full circle moment that it was. And I know the Lord touched me then. Because I had been asking the Lord, I'm like, Lord, if you don't want me to carry more children, just tell me so I can release that, because it's so precious. And I'm like, I can give that to you.
Yeah.
But could you just tell me one way or another, So we'd been praying, and we're feeling like we had words, but then he prayed for us, and I knew the Lord touched me that day. And we have Wilder Justice McCrae now. He's
Wilder.
Amazing. He was
tell me about the
pounds.
name. Tell me about the name.
Well, I mean, Wonder's name is Wild too. We felt like the Lord named them both. I started seeing Wonder's story is kind of crazy. So it's like after the Lord named her, we're like, okay, you got to give this sweet kid, whoever he is, a cool story, because the name is so important, And I started seeing Wilder everywhere. This is before we knew we'd have another little boy in Reading. I started seeing Wilder, and I was hearing Wilder, and Wilder Justice. Justice was always meant to be in the name. When Stephen and I we weren't dating. Another teaching moment. I wouldn't do this. I would never recommend this. At some point, the Lord had me start praying for Stephen. Before I met him, I didn't know who he was. It was like an assignment, side note. And the Lord told me to stand with Stephen no matter what. And I didn't even know who I was praying for. I was dating some other guy. I was dating another guy. And he's like, man, I hope you meet the Stephen you're praying for, because he needs these words. It's a wild guy. Had no idea that I was going to end up marrying the guy. But all that to say, when I finally realized who this Stephen was I was praying for, I was like, whoa. And so we actually, in person, there was other people around. I got to pray over him, and it flies out of my mouth. You'll have a son called Justice and a daughter called Grace. And I am like, okay, that's a little bit much. I thought because we don't dates, mates, and babies.
Right.
We weren't allowed, we didn't do that.
Which is why I felt so awkward when you told me the story, because we don't do that. Yeah,
I know,
yeah.
But it flies out of my mouth. I didn't think about it first. And sometimes there's a sovereign thing that happens when you're like, ooh, and sure enough, so down the road, we're like, okay, we're going to have a daughter with Grace in her name, and we're going to have a son with Justice in his name.
Wow.
So sure enough, we're like, well, Justice is in there. And I was seeing Wilder everywhere. I get to Nashville. Stephen's like, babe, what do you think? And I'm like, I think when we get to the Nashville area, it feels like then, but I'm like walking around downtown, and there's like neon lights that say Wilder, and this is getting, okay, it's going to be a boy. And I think we're going to name him Wilder. So I don't know, but the Lord said my labor and carrying was so wild. He was almost 11 pounds.
What?
And I'm tiny. I'm not
11 pounds? That's a big baby.
It's a big child.
Yeah.
And they're like, you gave birth to a toddler. And I'm like, phew. Yeah. And it was such a crazy process, completely different than Wonder. But the Lord said to me, it's costly to carry Wilder Justice.
Wow.
We didn't know he would come even in the day that he did, but we feel like he's a peacemaker, the biblical kind.
Yeah.
Not the passive, but a true peacemaker. So, and McCrae is my grandfather's name.
Okay.
Who is a stunning preacher
Want any more?
and worshiper. I do. Currently, it would take a miracle for my body to carry more.
Okay.
But yes.
Yeah. Yes. I keep telling my wife, like, I would have a basketball team.
Listen.
But she shut down the muffin factory. So
I get
I don't know if we should put that in. But yeah, okay. I love you, baby.
Muffins.
Listen, we
carry on.
We have gone. We could go forever, and I will definitely have you back if you would love to come. But I have a couple of questions I want to get you before we run out of time. Yeah. Worship, right? Mm-hmm. We talked about stadiums. Yeah. I would really love some of your insight. Because I think there's a few people, whatever, I'll be a little judgy, but I won't name names. No, I'm just kidding. No, I just feel like...
Truthful.
No. We've been around a long time. We've been going after God a long time. And I think we're touching our 40s, right? Well, you're touching it, right? So we've shifted into a different season in our lives where we were like kids.
Right.
And like we were crazy and we were just running and gunning on planes, in nations, signing things, signing deals, doing whatever, like, and now I feel like we're both in a place of like, okay, what's real? What do we want? Yes. What are we going after? What is God telling us to do in the next phase of our life? Yes. I feel like when I look back at the early days, right, the Morning Star, somebody handed me a Morning Star tape the first night I got saved. I listened to that every single day, every single night. So Morning Star with like, Don Potter, right? Face the Wall,
Daddy Don,
right? Uh-huh. Oh man, I'm gonna really date myself here, but
I'm probably right there with you.
You know, like that early worship where there was no fame, or like the famous ones were like Keith Green, right? Yeah. Who was like, yeah, you should be, buddy, because you're amazing.
Before worship was a genre.
Yeah. So now it's a genre.
Oh yeah.
Right, and And there seems to be a lot of favor on it. But give me your thoughts on the music, the worship genre, if you don't mind.
Ooh.
And we don't have to name names. I don't want to do that. But I feel this tension.
It's the fruit.
But I also see favor because I also feel like we're seeing the things that we cried out for. Like, God, take it to the nations. God, put it on the biggest platforms.
Yes.
But at the same time, I'm grieved.
Yes, because then we have to steward that.
Right.
When he answers that prayer.
Right.
Then we have to walk it out with purity and do the things we did at first.
So how can you do that? Can we do that?
Yes.
How?
Yes.
How can you stand in front of thousands of people?
Because you go back to one. Every time. You come back to one and you throw down that crown. And I think that Jesus was meek and lowly, and everyone he chose was lowly and meek. Or a mess, a hot mess, you know? But his calling, and I think this is right now, if I can, any young people, like, I still feel young, but you know what I mean?
We're young.
I just hear the Lord's, we've gotten so caught up in the calling to do this and the calling to do that. Jesus only ever called people to himself. He said, come, follow me, and I'll make you.
Right.
I'll make you this and commission you to do that. But the calling is not to be a worship leader, and the calling is not to do all this stuff. It's not it. He called us to himself. And if he's the way, and he's the truth, and he's the life, and in the secret place, we are truly yielded and walking with him, then those things, they don't have any flavor. It's not the reward.
Yeah.
The reward is when you come home and his presence washes over you in that secret place. And you stop caring if you ever leave that place.
Yeah.
Because our sweet friend Michael Culiano says it's a satisfaction issue. If that's not true, then we've got a satisfaction issue. He's not met you in that place of satisfying everything. He's the water and the well. Right?
Yeah.
And some of us are like, oh, he's the water. So we always want living water, but we don't. He's the only place we can get it.
Yeah.
Right. And so and he's not a genie. He's not like this. This isn't a buffet.
Yeah.
We eat the whole lamb. The bitter herbs, we eat the whole lamb. We need the whole Christ, or have no part with him at all. And I think we're finding the difference. I think we've got a lot of people who did not have built here a structure of intimacy or maturity, and then there was a crown put on their head and it crushed them. And we've started to think that the favor had something to do with us.
Right. So creatives, so my parents are artists, right?
Yeah.
I grew up around artists. The creatives, I feel like a lot of the creatives that I know have a hard time with accountability because it's like, this is my gift.
It's true.
And I think that there is something really beautiful about creative people going to the beat of their own drummer.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's part of what makes them great. But how do you disciple this up and coming generation, right? Yeah. That when you and I first started in ministry, we didn't have the Spotify, the YouTube.
Right.
I mean, it was there, but nobody was utilizing it. We didn't have the Instagram. Yeah. We had Facebook, maybe.
Right.
And
MySpace.
Yeah, MySpace. A little bit. We're not that far back, girl.
No.
But like, how do you disciple, or like, what are you telling this younger generation of worship leaders as they're raising up? Because we've seen some stuff even recently, and I try to stay out of the drama, but I do. You hear stuff.
It's very real,
and I also see people that are navigating it really,
really beautiful,
really well.
Yes.
But it seems like they have to publicly be like, hey, I'm not about any of that, could care less. And it does seem to, this is just my opinion, it does seem to cost some of them some of the open doors.
Absolutely, it does.
So how do you navigate a younger generation that's like, I feel this calling of worship and I want to go to the nations?
Yeah. Well, it's become very romantic. It's become super sexy, and the idea of leading that many people and being on a platform, and when really it's quite costly, the real thing. And I think that one of the things that I'm sitting one-on-one or in small groups with younger worshipers are going, like, if most people that I know have known, so many people that I've known through the years couldn't open a Bible and tell you where anything was, couldn't preach the gospel, couldn't, and that's a lot of musicians. It's a lot of artists. It's a lot of like, it's like they got up to do their part, and then we're just whatever, It's like in front of the singers, yes, but then we started really loving to be in front, don't realize that the backbone of all that, you can't minister as a priest. This isn't about the people in front of you. This is about ministering to the Lord, ministering to His presence. And so I think I'm trying to get them back to this.
Right.
Get them back to the gospel and go, look, can we first be obsessed with the one we are singing to? This isn't actually about your songs going all over the world. The Lord will do whatever He wants with your songs. But if these 5 people are the only ones that hear them, but you've ministered, you've touched the Lord, you've touched His heart, you'll know. Yeah. Because His presence will be resting on you and in you. Yeah. Like the fruit will always speak of the root. And so like when we're sitting, down, I'm like, let's look at the fruit, because it doesn't lie. There's so much entitlement, there's so much arrogance. And I think that there's not been enough of the presence in those places to reveal what's really going on underneath. There's been a lot of people who are able to hide behind their gifting, but the character is garbage. Or there's a secret thing that they just won't touch. Right? But until the glory of the Lord comes, until His presence increases, that stuff's not revealed. But you turn up the heat, and it can't live there. Yeah. And it starts coming up, and it's ugly, right? But I'm going, come to the table, be in community, be in this word. If you don't know this, we don't have any business talking about platforms. I don't want to hear about you're called to do this. I don't want to hear about, and that sounds harsh, because honestly, I don't think it
sounds harsh at all.
It's like, but we don't have any business talking about how you're going to go do this and this and this for God if you're not even telling me what you love about Him. If you can't even tell me like what this says and study it and get it right. Study to show yourself approved. That's not just for if you're a preacher. Yeah. It should be every one of us. Yeah. So I think it's basics. It's like, goodness sakes, coming back to Bible basics. Yeah. Living the gospel, and then that's overflow.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Following Jesus.
Okay, so on that point of following the Bible, right? And coming from a place of knowing Him first. Yes. One of the criticisms that I have heard, I hear a lot of stuff, right? But I'm in Randy's seminary. So I'm working on my master's, and in some of the world that I've gone into for some of the some of the stuff we have to do, I end up dealing with a lot of critiques of the charismatic movement, Pentecostal movement, which I'm fine with and I love. But one of the things that I've watched a lot of is people who are like, listen, if they're a part of Bethel or a part of Hillsong, then we should not be singing their songs.
Sure, I've heard that a lot.
Can you talk to me about that? Because I think that comes into basically what I think their argument is they are theologically not sound, right?
Sure. Yeah, they say
so we shouldn't sing. But I'm sure you've faced some of that where you're like, you're singing these things in the Lord, but it's the opposite of the word says.
And I would say I've written some of those songs.
Okay, like what? Can I ask what?
Yeah, let me think.
Okay.
I mean, maybe not something. I don't think I've written anything. I would never write anything that I didn't think was sound here.
Okay.
But I have written songs that are more about the internal. I would say in my more immature state than I would ever write now. And I think it's because if I'm meant to minister to the Lord, the more I spend time looking at myself, how do I expect it? Where is that going to get me? Right? That just gets me in all the meanness, and it's awful. Yeah. So I think.
And Steph, in that place of vulnerability, there's a myriad of messages I pray never make it and see the light of day.
Yes.
A myriad. There's so many things that I preach in my immaturity.
It's
true.
Oh,
God, you have no idea.
You know how Chris talks about there's books he wouldn't ever, he would never have written.
Yeah.
You know, that's real, but I think it's along the way. It's like, sometimes I feel like, I mean, it comforts me when I read about the Lord rebuking his disciples because I know he reproves the ones he loves. And we have to learn those lessons, you know? And so I would say that I taught things to artists before that I would be like, burn it!
Right.
Burn it! You know, then, but all that to say, those songs, there are songs that are like, I think in the last year, there was like, it wasn't until you got to like the top 60 or something on charts. I was told this. I don't even look at the charts. Yeah. I don't care about any of that garbage. But I didn't. Someone told me they were in a meeting where they were listing off all of the charts. And until song like 60, there wasn't even anything that was to the Lord about
What do you mean? So
all of the songs, there are all these Christian songs that are considered worship.
Right.
Oh, this is painful to me. They're considered worship, but they're not actually to him, about him. They're about what we get out of it. Which is so true. There's truth in them.
Yep.
It's just that when we've come to minister to the Lord, that is not what we're doing. This is not like, and I get this, and I get this, and I get this. Like, it's become so much about us. I don't even know how we call it worship anymore sometimes. Like,
so
I don't even know.
what's your line of demarcation, right? It's just, it is about him, or is it about?
Well, my line of demarcation is if you know the presence of the Lord, you feel it lift when those songs come on. You can go from singing a worthy is the Lamb.
Right. Agnes
or look
Dei.
To the Lamb. Agnus Dei. Holy.
Oh my God.
Holy. And we go from this song and we go into like a super like heart, what I get out of it. And I'm not saying these songs aren't beautiful. I think they should be written. And I think that they're meant to be in ministry and intimacy with the Lord. I think we have to have those moments. But when we're leading, when we're like with a whole people and we've come for the purpose and we're calling it worship, like it has to be from him and through him and to him are all things. And it just gets into a really soupy, dangerous place. Yeah. So I would say it's marking, and I've been doing this with some young people, and I do this with Wonder. I do this with our little girl. I'm like, did you feel the change in the room? And she'll say to me, she's like, is that holy? I'm like, yeah, that's holy. This is a couple years ago. And she goes, I said, what does it feel like to you? And she said, well, it's heavy, but it's not bad. She said, you know, and I'm like, that's it, sissy. And so there are these moments, and I'm doing that with, hopefully, I pray, oh, Jesus, help me. Oh, help me do it well. I'm pushing on those things, right? Like, hey, not to throw anybody else under the bus, but going like, did you feel the shift?
Right.
And we do that with like Josh and I, who's my worship pastor at church. Like they're such dear, he and his wife, and we're like, did you feel that shift? Yeah, well, it was when we did this song.
Yeah.
It's because we went from here to here, right? And it makes a huge difference. And we do that in our lives all the time. And I think there's such a buzz. Listen, I believe the Lord talks about many counselors. I'm all about it. I love counselors. I had counseling. I'm going to keep having, I love it. But like, if we would completely yield to Jesus and yield to this gospel, yield to his presence, walk with Jesus, walk in community like the Acts church. And there was no need among them. There was none feeble among them. Like if we could yield to, to that place. I mean, we wouldn't, I love how Leif says it, we wouldn't find ourselves asking the Lord to bless what we're doing. We'd find ourselves doing what he's blessing. Yeah. Right. And then we'll find the fruits in the root that comes from the root. Like it's why two people can get up and sing the same song. Right. And one, you're like, well, I didn't feel that at all, even though the song was true. And then somebody gets up and you're like, yeah, you know what I mean? And not that we don't attach it to the people, but you can tell when someone's been in the secret place. Yeah. You don't just come up with it. Favor is one thing. Right. And that can move a room. Like sheep are still sheep. We're still sheep. Okay. We can be moved by something and not changed by something. There's a remarkable difference if we're staying close to the flame. If we stay close to his presence, then we can feel the difference between high energy and high praise. Right. That feels very different. But if we're not, if we're just right in that line, right, and there's no intimacy, we won't recognize it. We don't discern the door. We're not walking in Jesus, John 10. We're not walking in Jesus, the door. We're thieves and robbers. We've come in another way. And we think because we have favor that we have blessing. It's not the same.
Come on.
So it's like little things, and everybody's story is different. So we're like along the way, I just as he gives me opportunity, I tremble, man. I don't know. I spend a lot of time losing sleep and crying over this stuff because I know I'm going to stand before the Lord for what I say, but what I don't say. Right. And I can't afford to not say those things when he gives me moments with some of these young people. Like there's some Babylon falling right now. Yeah. There's Babylon is falling. And I'm thankful that with even some people, like I'm praying for mercy for all of us. Any one of us is just a couple days away from that.
Yes.
No one.
And I also think so I think about this a lot because like in my world, it's the preacher that falls and has the affair, right? Or it's the preacher that stops reading his Bible and just lives off of last year's message for 20 years, right? It's no different in the ministerial world. No. But man, I feel like it's such a holy thing. Yes. And favor will get you so far. That's right. Right? Yeah. But there are voices that God, I think in your generation, even the one that's coming up, there's voices that have it, that carry it. But people don't understand. And I don't know what I'm trying to say. Like, let me just parse this out for a second. You give a basketball player, right? Somebody that's they've grown up, or a football player, they've grown up, in corn-fed middle America, and then you stick them on a team. Yeah. And they have millions of dollars. They don't know the attack. They don't know the people that come out of the woodwork that are trying to sign them to deals. And how should people navigate that? Because I think a lot of times it's easy to sit back and judge, be like, that leader fell, or that.
Oh yeah.
Like how dare their heart get twisted? Aren't they supposed to be a worshiper? Yeah. But they have no idea what it's like to face that sort of pressure, going from a church of 30 people or 40 people to a stage of 70,000 people.
Oh, I know. My heart breaks for like these leaders that like blew up and had no idea it was coming. And then you just navigate the mess as you go. Like I think.
But that's what happened to you. And you navigated it well. So what were the keys besides just staying in his presence?
Because we're all a mixed bag. Mm-hmm. Because I humbled myself. Yeah. I asked for help. Yeah. And that was scary to me because I think internally I grew up believing, nobody taught me this, but I think I grew up believing in a more rigid environment, like of, that asking for help meant weakness. Yeah. That something was wrong with you. Right. And so if you get to that point, then you're not okay. So I think, being in Reading, I mean, that bat had to fly away. Because the Lord, I was incapable. I came face to face with like my absolute inability to do anything he desired of me. I couldn't do any of it. I was terrified of all of it. Terrified to blow it, terrified that everybody would be like, she doesn't really everything was scary. And I was like, unless this is really all for you and you do it through me, it's never going to happen.
Yeah.
You know, if the Lamb's going to receive his full reward in my life, if you're getting all of me, then you're going to have to do this through me. I can't. And I think there's so much entitlement that's crept into the worship world. So much entitlement because we think his presence has something to do with us, or we think the crowds in the stadiums have come to hear us.
Yeah.
And the humility, it's that thing I think I hit almost more than anything with people is hey, we keep hitting a stronghold of arrogance and we can't get past this until, like, it's what made Lucifer fall. He was doing the worship thing.
Right.
We cannot do arrogance. Like, Jesus is meek and humble and lowly. He showed us how, you know, like, and I think we need help. We need people who like I know you all are that, like, we need relationships where people will bring us back to this.
Yeah.
Where we won't surround ourselves with people who are just like trying to pump us full of their opinions or their revelations. Yeah. People don't need my opinion about their life. They don't need what I think they're supposed to do. They need this.
Yeah.
They need the Lord to meet with them. I don't want to attach their stability to me or something I've said, right?
Yeah.
If I don't lead them to walk on their own, to walk with Jesus, then I'm not making disciples. I'm making duplicates.
Yeah.
I'm saying, you know, and that's what a lot of them are doing. They're doing what they've seen done, and it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Because you have to have your own walk with Jesus.
Come on. Okay, so listen, I don't know what time it is.
I don't even know, but we all got to go.
Give me like 2 minutes.
Okay, 2 minutes.
Who when Steph gets alone and she puts on worship, who are the people that you listen to?
Oh, I listen to Jeremy Riddle.
I freaking love that dude.
Listen to Jeremy Riddle because tried and true.
Love you, Jeremy Riddle.
Tried and true.
Legit.
Tried and true. Those people walk with Jesus.
What's the name of his book that he put out?
The Reset.
Yes.
Oh, I would recommend that to everyone.
Read it. It'll blow your mind.
It's stunning.
It's spectacular. What a prophet.
Yeah.
Right? Love him. Who else?
I love Lindy. I love that burning heart.
Yeah.
I love the Upper Roomers. I love Jesus Image. I usually listen to their lives, a bunch of, you know, the live things.
Yeah.
And I listen to a lot of instrumental. I listen to Benny Hinn.
Yeah.
I listen to
Did that get you in any trouble? Because I know you were out there. And
no, you know what's wild? I grew up watching Benny Hinn.
I did too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd like get up in the middle of the night and my dad would be streaming tears watching and I'd just go watch the Crusades with him. So we were deeply marked. So it's really sweet to be knowing him now. He's such a gift to this generation. So I'm trying to think what else. I mean, we listen, my kids, like we do listen to anything I've put out. My kiddos, like my sissy loves to sing it. And I think I listen to a lot of old stuff. I listen if there's juice on it. Man. I can't do it anymore. Like there's so many beautiful things out there, like friends that make beautiful music. I love the Helsers. They're such close friends and some of my dearest friends. And so I just, but right now it's like Live in the Prayer Room with Jeremy Riddle is like what's on at all times, unless it's soaking in his presence.
When the two of you lead together, it's so powerful, so spectacular.
It was such a sweet season where we love them.
In 2 minutes, how do you write a song?
Oh man, there's different ways. I like to think of it as being a scribe. I can consider myself as a writer. I think both. Like there's a craft of writing a song, right? Mm-hmm. There's an actual craft you learn and you grow as you do it. But then there's also just like the gift that people give, you know, the Lord gives of language, like putting language to the heart of the Lord or whatever. And a lot of this. Yeah. A lot of the Bible. Like we don't, it depends on if I'm writing alone or with the Lord. Sometimes it comes like a melody first or like a line. I'll hear the Lord say something, and I don't try to turn everything into a song. I think there's a lot of songwriters who are just, they hit record and we've lost the sacred nature of intimacy. Right. not all songs are meant to be heard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I for fun driving up here, I have like the chat, GPT.
Yeah.
I was like, write a song in the style of Steffany Gretzinger.
Oh man.
And it came up and I was like, she could probably sing this and crush it. But it's just words. It's just words.
Honestly, I'm in the space where we don't have any writing session where I'm with other people or alone, where I just don't ask the Lord, what do you want to hear?
Yeah.
What do you want to hear? And what do you want your people to sing to you?
There's a song that I've been listening to over and over again as my wife's gone through, she's going through cancer. Yeah. And it's from the Loft Sessions. It's, what is it? You Know Me? Is that the name of it?
Yes.
I'm just trying to, I know we need to go, but I freaking love that song. I can't tell you how many times I've cried listening to it. Where were you when you wrote that song? And why is it so stinking powerful?
Man, well, I think this is why it's powerful. I think that a very scared and afraid to be misunderstood young girl, young adult, sat with the Lord and, and sang it over and over to the Lord. I'll tell you this, my best friend had passed. My very best friend had just passed suddenly. And I sat with the Lord over and over singing, when I rise and when I fall, my coming in and my going out, the number of hairs on my head, because I thought nobody would ever have the history I had with this precious guy. I mean, he encouraged me more than anything. I think he saw what I was going to do more than anybody sometimes. And really just a dear friend. And all through high school, we were best inseparable. If somebody wanted to know where he was, they asked me, vice versa, teachers, everybody. It was hilarious. But I sat with the Lord. He passed, and I would sing that to the Lord, and I would sing, you know me, you know me. It doesn't matter if anybody ever has that season with me. You have known me. You know my innermost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. There's nothing you don't see. Not a thought that comes up. You see it before you hear it before it comes up. So it was just, I sang that to him, and I spent a long time singing that with the Lord before I ever played it for anyone. I think I just sang it to Amanda, who was just one of my dearest friends in all the world. And I was singing it to her, and she's like, Steph, you have to sing this. You have to sing this to someone. I was like, I don't know that anyone else ever needs to do this. No, I don't think so. And she's like, no. And I think Jeremy, and then I think, one or two other people walked in. We were in the back the little back studio behind the Bethel stage.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they helped me be brave enough just to let anybody hear it. I was never going to sing it for anybody else.
It's got to be one of my favorites.
Thankful that it's.
There's so many. I'm so bad with names, but the hymns or the hymns of your father. What was it?
Faith of my father.
Faith of your father has been playing almost nonstop in my house. My wife listens to it.
We recorded that in Worcester.
Really?
We took everybody there and set up around the altar.
So cool.
And just we're a mess together.
That's amazing. Listen, Steph, I feel like we went all over the map.
We did. We could do it again.
I would love to.
And hit other places.
I would love to. I'm blown away by what God has done and is continuing to do in your life. Thank you for coming and just hanging out. And it's just been an honor. There's a lot going on. We got this thing at Asbury that's happening right now. Yeah. What would you say to those kids as we end? That this, did you go? Did you head out?
No, I had sick babies.
Yeah,
I wanted to.
We get to go up last Thursday, and they're worshiping. Yes. And one of the things that I saw, and I've heard a lot of, is there is no worship leader. It's just I heard out of tune notes being hit that I'd never heard before. It was perfect and pure and beautiful.
That's right.
What would you say to those guys that are leading worship? Presence of God's coming.
Yeah, I think if I had to shorten it, to pray for intimacy and the fear of the Lord. Because the fear of the Lord is clean. Psalm 19. The fear of the Lord will keep you in that purity. And then you won't be afraid of anything else.
Come on. Well, listen, we'll end it with that. Steph, love you, girl. Thank you so much for coming.
It's my joy.